update now to a story that we have been following. A federal judge has ruled in favor of Capitol Hill Baptist Church in Washington, D.C., temporarily granting a request to gather for outdoor worship services despite the city's coronavirus restrictions banning church services of more than 100 people. Capitol Hill Baptist Church, with a congregation of approximately 1,000 people, had been forced to meet across the river in Virginia, where there are fewer restrictions. They will now move to outdoor spots in the District of Columbia. Joining me now on Skype to talk more about the ruling and its implications for religious freedom is Jeremy Dice, Special Counsel for Litigation and Communications for First Liberty Institute, which represented Capitol Hill Baptist Church in this case. Jeremy, welcome back. So good to see you again. First off, we should note that this decision only applies to this one particular church. Can you tell us why that is? And also, can you give us a little history about Capitol Hill Baptist Church and why being able to worship together in person as a full congregation is so significant in this case?
Yeah, it applies to this church because this is the church that was requesting the relief and not all the churches were requesting the relief. So that's a simple answer. But this was a long and hard decision for this church to make. They want to be very respectful of the governing officials there in the District of Columbia. And that's why they went multiple times to try to seek some relief one-on-one with the district leadership there. But they just weren't able to make any headway in doing so. And so after an even longer period of time of really doing a lot of soul searching and a lot of prayer, they determined, look, we have to move forward on this. Capitol Hill Baptist is a church that believes that a church is one that gathers in person. There are just things you cannot do outside of in-person gatherings of some sort. It's awful hard to do a baptism, for instance, when you're not gathered. This church does not have online worship service. They don't even meet in multiple locations or stream their services elsewhere. They meet together. And that's why this has been so difficult. You mentioned that they've been meeting across the river. That's true, but that's also been 27 miles away from where their current location is in the district. And so 40% or more of their congregation, many of whom who have no cars, had a very difficult time even getting to that field in Virginia. We're grateful now that the court has seen fit to provide an opportunity for the church to meet in the district outside, socially distanced, while wearing a mask. I think they can do that safely, and they're eager to do so.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the church was trying to be respectful. They had set a waiver twice before deciding to sue. One of the church's arguments was that the city was not enforcing its rules fairly. Let's talk about that. What types of large gatherings have been permitted in D.C. while Capitol Hill Baptist wasn't allowed to worship in the district?
Well, I think we've all seen a lot of them appear on TV, right? And these riots and these protests that have occurred over the last couple of months. And the church is very understanding about why many would want to do that. And indeed, they would support those to peacefully protest as they see fit to make sure that racial injustice is confronted appropriately in our nation. But then they started seeing a couple other things. Businesses were given a little bit more deference. Seating for restaurants increased to a certain amount that was even higher than the churches were allowed to meet with. You saw even a pop-up movie theater in RFK Stadium's parking lot pop up there for 350 people, and an entertainment venue allowing outdoor seating with like a little jazz trio of some sort with up to 800 people being able to participate. And that was approved, all approved by the District of Columbia. And so there was clearly an issue of equality and fairness that was going on here. And so they very reluctantly had to pursue into the federal court system to point out that the rules that the district had come up with just simply weren't being applied fairly and equally. I am, and I know they are, very glad to know that the federal district court here has seen fit to say, yeah, if you can meet safely outside, socially distanced, with a mask on, certainly that's at least as equal as going for a long walk as a protest with hundreds of other people as well.
I know the judge in the case said the limitations are causing a, quote, substantial burden under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Can you explain how that was a factor here? And do you think this is something that we're likely to hear in other cases like this?
Yeah, it is something you'll hear more and more, and especially across the nation. We've been dealing with this for a long time now through this pandemic. And it's a substantial burden in this regard, especially for this congregation. They have no other means of meeting together. To have to drive 27 miles when you don't have a car to meet in a field in Virginia is very difficult. You can't meet online. This church believes that a church is properly gathered when they gather in person. And so to have some other substitute doesn't mean it's a church for them. And so it is a clear burden, and not just a simple one, but a very substantial burden upon the free exercise of their religion. The city is welcome to provide a lot of evidence to say that they have to require churches in particular to separate themselves and treat them differently than entertainment videos like movie theaters or movie theaters outside. But they haven't produced that evidence, or at least not to the satisfaction of this court. And so thankfully, we've got laws like the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that say unless the court can, or unless the city or the state can provide a compelling interest to justify their behavior, they cannot substantially burden the free exercise of religion of the people of these United States. That's what the court did in this case. And that's why I think the church will be able to meet, I hope, this coming Sunday, outdoors, safely at a distance, and mass as well outside as they worship on Sunday.
Well, Jeremy, we thank you for your time. Jeremy Dice, Special Counsel for Litigation and Communications for First Liberty Institute. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.